Yes, we can get that to you next week in terms of the options and the sort of timeline for those options.
Matter 11 deals with heritage, and I'm pleased to say that they are.
Sorry, just before you move on, in terms of those options, it may be helpful just to set out the council's preferred option in terms of the way forward, and then obviously we can then take a view on that.
Within the note. Yes, okay.
Thank you. Moving on, matter 11 is heritage, and I'm pleased to say that, that they're all modifications now. So action 84 was a modification to policy HE1 Part D, and it's further clarity of the term heritage asset, and specifically providing some differentiation between designated and non-designated. Action 85 is complete, and we have submitted that. So that's with you. Action 86, the council will consider a modification to policy HE2 Part H, so that clarifying the position in respect of national planning policy guidance and the public benefits tests. Action 87, we will consider a new modification that revisits proposed modification MO 23, and that's in respect of policy HE2 Part F. In terms of non-designated heritage assets, policy HE3, we're seeking a new modification. We're introducing a new modification. That's with reference to the council's response to matter 11 MIQ 11.16, and I've helpfully given ourselves the reference to the council's response at its paragraph 11.18.2. Moving on to matter 9, housing policies. Action 89 is a modification, so that's to differentiate between the applications of the decent home standard on public and private residential schemes. So I would hope that's a fairly modest change to the plan. Action 90 relates to supported and specialist accommodation. Sorry, action 90 relates to supported and specialist accommodation at policy HO6. So a new modification that provides a target or baseline position for this type of residential accommodation derived from the SHMA. So hopefully not an onerous, I'm looking at Angela, but not an onerous modification. Moving on, I'm pleased to say that Dr. Anthony Lee is aware of the next action 91. I believe he may have spoken to this yesterday afternoon, but it is action 91, to provide information to inform matter 21, to explain how the plan making process has considered development viability in relation to this issue. So no, that's still, sorry, my apologies, that is still an outstanding action. I'll make certain that we have that information. Is that something you require with the same urgency as the other package of actions that he will be providing?
I think if Dr. Lee is providing a note on the other matters that we've discussed, hopefully it wouldn't be too onerous to clarify that point as well.
Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on to policy HO10, which I believe may be the final one under matter 9. Action 92. The councillors agreed to seek further information from its consultants, ORS consultants, on the technical, on the extent of the precise extent of the technical evidence that they prepared in support of their gypsy and traveller accommodation assessment, and whether that included members of the community that continued to lead a nomadic lifestyle and thereby fell under the new definition of the planning policy guide.
It's more in relation to those who've ceased to travel, who. So
my apologies. I always get things mixed around the wrong way.
It does seem a while ago since that was discussed, doesn't it? And I would suggest that's critical to the post-hearings letter.
Action 93 is interrelated to that, so I'm guessing it's the same level of urgency, and it's to provide a commentary on the council's position and how that reflects on policy HO10. Action 94. Yes, that I do remember that one. That's to provide the inspectors with an update of what is publicly available from the Greater London Authority on its progress with the London-wide the work that's being undertaken across the capital on this matter.
I think that's critical as well, just in informing our view on the matter as a whole in terms of gypsies and travellers.
I certainly, I mean, I'm not the gypsy and traveller accommodation expert in the council, but I think that some of those, given that they involve obtaining further information from external consultants, may be challenging within the next week, but certainly matter 94. I think we can probably provide you with a position on that fairly rapidly. Matter 12, community infrastructure. Action 95 is a modification. So consider a modification to policy CI1 Part B. So strengthening and clarifying the text where to explain the circumstances where off-site contributions will be sought. Action 96 is also a modification. That's also to Part B, and that's to provide that sufficient flexibility that development viability will be considered by decision takers when determining proposals. Action 97 is a further modification. That's to policy CI2. And that I do remember this clearly, that the modification that distinguishes the approach that would be applied to between new and existing facilities, as is written here, so as to avoid the potential for unintended consequences. Action 98 is also a modification. That's to policy CI3 Part B, and it's been partially started on the action table. So that's to the opening sentence of the policy, of Part B of the policy, And it also says to consider an additional modification to Part A that sets out up front that new development will contribute towards increasing the capacity of existing provisions. So I think, as my colleague explained, given the nature of the borough and the nature of sports and recreation provision, it is all about enhancing the capacity of existing provision rather than new playing fields, etc. Matter 99 is to provide the examination with further information. This is in respect of how the council will monitor the operational outcomes of improvements to recreation provision. So this may well segue into the very final action from this morning around KPIs in table. Is it table 19.1? Yes. So that's matter 9. That's action 99. Action 100 is to consider a further modification to policy CI3 to make it clearer that there's a greater emphasis upon the. So yes, again, I remember this access inequality issues. That's the accessibility to sports and recreation provision. Action 101 is a modification that seeks to provide a definition of what constitutes informal recreation space. It's suggested here that utilizes the typologies that exist, that continue to exist in the previous PPG 17 guidance on this. And there's just a footnote whether this is located appropriately within the community infrastructure chapter or whether it is perhaps best located in under the green infrastructure chapter. Action 102 provides further information to the examination, and that's clarification whether the new Local Plan Act policy CI3 Part D replicates or follows the wording of the London plan. We'll seek to identify what the specific London plan reference is to that cross reference that's alluded to. Action 103, fairly modest modification, the consideration of removing the word only at policy CI4 Part B. Again, from memory, that's so that the policy reads more positively. Moving on to matter 13, action 104 under policy GR2 is a modification that seeks to consider how new provision will be secured and consistency with modification action 98 as set out above. Again, this is around the discussion of inclusion and equality and access to provision. The council has agreed that we will contact the Downham Dividend Society to make sure that they're happy with what we're proposing and it meets their concerns. Obviously, the council is very grateful to the Downham Dividend Society for the contribution they've gave at the examination on that day. Action 105. So that seeks to provide the inspectors with further factual technical information in relation to the emission site being promoted by AA Homes. I think this is specifically in relation to clarifying the position on its status as part of the wider sink that follows the railway alignment running north to south upon which the site sits. Is that a matter of urgency? If it is, I believe it's probably information we can provide within a week. It is an urgent matter.
It is.
Okay.
Yes. Please.
Smashing.
Yes, 105 and 106 sort of together are things that we would need to know more about in order that we could then provide some advice in that post-hearings letter.
I'm confident that we can respond to that, respond to both of those promptly. Action 107, that relates to biodiversity and access to nature, policy GR2. That's yes. So it provide inspectors of whether the requirement that assessments be prepared by qualified ecologists is a component of our validations checklist. Again, if that is a matter of urgency, I'm betting it isn't. It is something that we can clarify quite quickly. Action 108, so that's to provide the examination with progress or an update on progress of the local nature strategy with the GLA. 109, so that's a curious one. Amend modification reference MO 226. So that it deletes the extensive references to figures, maps. Yes, I do vaguely remember these, and that they are. I think that as we learned at on that examination hearing session, they're subsequently referenced under modification MO 227. So it's a bit of duplication, a fairly straightforward modification. Action 110. So okay, so this is the council's allotment waiting list. Something that we would need to liaise with another service to obtain, but I would imagine it's something that could be prepared as a report relatively quickly, subject to that service responding quickly.
Yes, 109 is an action to be completed, but it's not an urgent action.
Okay.
So that's 109, the allotment waiting list point. Yeah.
Matter 14 is sustainable design and infrastructure. Action 111 is to provide the examination with a brief note that sets out the particular issues that justify the new local plan's approach towards climate change, specifically setting out why it deviates from national planning policy guidance, the brackets, the written ministerial statement. So this is the going beyond the building regulations.
And that one would be on our more urgent list,
okay.
Please.
Thank you. Matter 112 is to provide the examination with further background information, specifically explaining where the 500 square metre threshold in policy SD2 Part C is derived from and what evidence underpins that requirement.
And again, that one's on our more urgent list as well, please.
Okay, understood. Action 113 is a modification, and that's fairly modest, removing the word only. Action 114 is to provide the inspectors with further information. So it's around the continued appropriateness of retaining table 11.1 within the policy wording. So again, whether the table needs to be included in the policy wording or whether as a modification it moves to the supporting text. I think a fairly modest request there. Action 115, so provide the examination with yes, whether the council's energy master plan has been subject to public consultation or not. and what status it subsequently carries as a corporate document. Action 116 is to consider further modification to policy SD4 Part G. So yeah, again, a fairly modest modification, relocating text to the supporting text. Action 117, again, a further modification to policy SD4 Part H. Again, relocating text to the supporting text. And action 118, that's an update, modification that updates footnote 114, reflecting the factual position on the air quality management air quality management action plan, whether it's been adopted or whether it remains a draft. Moving on, action 119 is also a modification. So that's a fairly straightforward definition of sustainable drainage within the glossary. Action 120 seeks to modify policy SD8 Part C, relocating text, referencing non-technical standards to supporting text. There's also a minor modification around changing the word consultation to collaboration. Action 121 is providing the examination with further information. A short paper setting out how policy SD12 will be sufficiently flexible in determining proposals for potentially bad neighbour waste uses. So yes, I remember this now. The bad neighbour waste uses that are guided to strategic industrial locations, but which may seek to deter improvements to those strategic industrial locations by their bad neighbourliness. Action 122 is in support of modifications reference MO 71 and 73. So yes, this is providing the examination with a copy of the wording from the Bexley local plan in relation to that issue. That ends the actions from week 2. I'll try and move more swiftly.
Yeah, I was just looking at week 3. I think the numbering, there's a bit of an overlap between the action point numbering between week 2 and week 3. It's not a massive issue, but it just could get confusing. So is that something that can maybe just in due course just amend the action point numbering and get thoroughly confused?
Yes, I'm particularly frustrated about this because it's something I've been keen to avoid, this bad numbering. I'm not sure. I think potentially that this may be a version control issue, and that it may be a case that the version that's been, so this is not my colleague's fault. This is my fault because it's me who sent this version today of week 3. I think the numbering, that there is a subsequent version of the week 3 table that has the correct numbering. I believe that you have an electronic version of that correct version. If you haven't, we certainly can send it through.
Right, okay. I've annotated this version. Just in terms of expediting matters, I think in terms of the action points in week 3, quite a lot of those action points relate to looking at site capacities and in terms of the trajectory, and I suspect some of those actions may have been superseded by the amended trajectory. I think there are a few which I can maybe just highlight rather than go through each individual one. I think, say Ravensbourne Retail Park, reconsider the suggested uplift, for example. I mean, is that something that the council's done as part of the revised trajectory, for example? Just to save us possibly going through every action point.
Yes, in terms of the uplift to the Ravensbourne Retail Park, we did go away and consider that. Was that week 3? Yes, I think it was week 3, and discussed that with colleagues from DM and also our urban design officers. And on reflection, I think we think that we should revert back to the original position rather than provide the uplift. Just given the sensitivities around the adjacent conservation areas and the building heights, and also the conversations that we had with the participants as well. So we have reverted back to the capacity prior to the suggested uplift, and that's what's reflected in the trajectory.
Okay, is it worth just focusing then in terms of the action points and where if there are some action points to the wording, the policy itself? I think where it's been superseded by the trajectory, we could probably just gloss over those quite quickly rather than go through every single action point. I think it's just slightly different with the site-specific matters, because I think a lot of the modifications are reviewing the capacities, so hopefully they've been picked up as part of the trajectory. I'm just thinking of a way to save a little bit of time.
Yes, I think as part of the final trajectory that we've submitted, I'm almost 100% convinced that I've taken everybody's comments into account when we were going through the different sub areas. So anything that's on the modifications list has either been done or has been superseded.
Okay, then so in going through the action points, is it worth just flagging up the ones where there's a need for further action where their action hasn't been superseded by the trajectory? We're just discussing, we are conscious of time. I think it would have been nice to finish by lunchtime, but I think in terms of prioritising the actions, it is quite a useful process to go through. So we're wondering if we had a lunch break now, whether that would give the council time to just, on these site-specific matters, just to look through and flag up any that aren't superseded by the revised trajectory, and then just flag those up to us when we come back. Is that a way forward, just to save time?
Yeah, that sounds perfect. Yeah.
Would 3/4 of an hour be sufficient? I'll say 1:45. I'm happy to take a steer from the council in terms of, how long it would take to do that and to get lunch and things.
Yeah, 1:45 is fine with us. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. We shall adjourn till 1:45. Thank you.